Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday Satsang. The flow of life, what we can call daily living. So, life, events, circumstances, conversations, interactions, exchange of information or objects. What we may also call content of life, content of experience. So in each moment, moment after moment, the content of experience, the flow of life unfolds in the form of actions, in the form of interactions, in the form of events, consequences, outcomes to some actions or events that happened before. All of that put together, we can label as the flow of life for Gurleen, because Gurleen seems to have this unique unique buffet of experiences that she's experiencing throughout every moment, throughout the day, throughout her life, which seems to be different from someone else's buffet of experiencing. And yet there is this possibility of coming together and feeling connected in a way that communication can happen verbally, non-verbally, telepathically, energetically, and it may feel like that we are able to relate with someone else's experience and yet not really recognizing that the experience for one being and another being are totally one with who they are, one with their lens of perception, the layers of conditioning that is included in the perceiving of those events and the flow of life. Even the words that are being used in this moment through me are coming out through this filter, through this lens, translator of meaning given to each word that is being spoken. And at the listening end, the words are being heard. They're filtering through those lens of those systems of conditioning on what each word is meant in the system. And the words and their meaning, their interpretation is trickling down the system. So what is said here and what is heard there may actually be completely different things. What I know as red, if I say, oh, look, red, and is there a way to know what the other one is seeing? What if my red is their yellow, and yet we both call that red? So when we're talking, it looks like we're on the same page because, oh, that's red. And yet my experience of red is what we label as red, and their experience of red is what we experience as yellow, but they know it as red. Point being, that the flow of life is uniquely designed for each one of us. And it is impossible. It is not designed for us to be able to know someone else's experience the way we can know our own experience. The only thing that can ever be known completely is my own experience. Whatever is experienced from here, within here, in this localized manifestation of consciousness, which we label as Gurleen or Ricky or Ranjan or Shiv. Or John or Mary or even though the flow of life, the events, one after another in the flow of life, are uniquely designed for each human experience, yet there is a theme to that flow of life for all of us. This experience called life is designed in a way that it's either pleasure or pain, either agreeable to me or not agreeable to me, either something that feels good or something that feels bad. It can be extremely painful, it can be extremely pleasurable, or it can be neutral in the middle where it is neither pleasurable nor painful, but just there. Like maybe most of the day when we are reading, or unless we read something that really intrigues us, or drinking water, just sitting throughout, scrolling on Instagram. We would call it neither pleasurable or painful. And yet, the definition of what's pleasurable for me may be painful for another. I may love to spend alone time or just be by myself, not really wanting to socialize maybe for days or weeks or whatnot. And yet, for someone else, that might be the extremely painful circumstance. They may love to connect with people, to talk with them, to reach out to friends and family, and really enjoy that and miss that when that's not available. So one's pleasure can be another's pain. And yet, all ever flow of life can be is either pleasure or pain. Either something that I like, something that I enjoy, or something that I don't like, or something that I don't enjoy. Coming to recognize, to see, to confirm this for ourselves becomes crucial in understanding, in realizing that it is inevitable for there to be pain in life. Pain is designed within the fabric of life experience. It is not life gone wrong. It's not a glitch in the system. Life is supposed to be pleasure. Life is supposed to be pain at different moments, at different times, for different days, years, months, in different forms. So if pain is arising, there's nothing wrong with life. That is exactly life is designed. That is how life is designed. It is not a personal attack on who I am. And likewise, life is designed to be pleasure. It is not a reward for me. It is not something that I get when I am a good person or when I do good things or when I intend good, whatever good means in our system. Pleasure is just how life is designed to be. It is bound to be there. So even if I were, let's say, in a spiritual practice where the seeker inflicts pain on themselves to or to try and shun the pleasure, there may come a moment when the more pain we inflict on ourselves in the form of renunciation or in the form of physical pain, even like going barefoot in winter or not wearing warm clothes in the cold, just to train the body or as a form of spiritual practice, even though it may be physically considered pain, and yet there might be a pleasure in overcoming that restriction of the body. So pleasure in life is also inevitable, just like pain in life is inevitable. So it is okay for things to go my way, nothing of my accord. It's just how life is designed in this moment for it to go my way. My way and the way life is going seem to be in sync in this moment. And yet, life is bound to be pain. Life is bound to not go my way. Again, it's nothing personal. It's nothing that I did wrong, or for that matter, anybody else who did wrong by me, that life is not going my way. It's just that life is designed to be painful in this moment. Life is designed in this moment for me to feel betrayed if somebody else did something that wasn't agreeable to me, wasn't considered good by me. It's not that they did something wrong. It's just how life is designed itself as experiencing in this moment for me to feel, to experience that pain. Is it possible to really see through the pleasures and pains of life as events, as life's design, as God's will, and not personal doing by me, by other, by God, that may be considered a punishment or a reward for me? I'm sitting here, a mosquito comes and stings me on my arm. Well, nothing personal. It didn't look out just for me that I'm just going to sting her. And yet, in the story of life, in our relationships, in human interactions and interchanges, it does feel like in the storyline that someone may be out there to intentionally wish harm on us, let's say. They may think that they are willingly harming us. But is it possible to see that in my experiencing of life in this moment, life is designed in such a way that the other is bound to deliver what we may call betrayal or pain or harm on us? It's nothing out of their own accord. It is coming out of life's design, which can also be labeled as genes and up-to-date conditioning. How we, as a system of thoughts, feelings, mental constructs, likes, dislikes, all the experiences that have happened to us until this moment, all of that soup coming together creates this flavor of inevitable choice that happens through me and inflicts pain on you. I just happen to say something in this moment that offends you. And I may willingly be out there to do that because I think you offended me. So now my system is all riled up and comes out with a bigger offensive statement. Because in my system, I think that you did it, so you deserve my wrath. And yet, all throughout that, the one with understanding or the one without the misunderstanding is just able to see that this is exactly how life is going on in this moment. It is my genes and up-to-date conditioning that came up with a sentence or an interaction that didn't sit well with the other one based on their genes and up-to-date conditioning. And then their system reacted to that input that they received through me, and a chemical reaction is going on, or a human reaction is going on, and an output comes, which becomes my input. So then my genes and up-to-date conditioning receive that input, and then the reaction takes place, and then out it goes, and back and forth, back and forth. Nothing personal, just how we are designed, or just how life is designed, and just how life has designed us, each one of us, based on which parents we were born to, what DNA imprint is this system built up on, all the experiences that came from the very moment of conception, in the womb, out of the womb, as a baby, as a toddler, as a child, as a teenager, as an adult. All of that put together, and even in this moment, everything that is going on around us, consciously or subconsciously registering in the system, is building up, is evolving the genes and up-to-date conditioning. Ever changing, ever evolving, for the good or for the worse. That is only according to a benchmark. So even in my genes and up-to-date conditioning, all the seeming qualities, virtues, or all the seeming weaknesses or bad points of my way of functioning in life, they are all a result of life's design, all a result of Gurleen's design. So Gurleen is designed, is bound to react or to not react to certain events, certain situations in the way that she does or doesn't do. We all have our buttons, we all have our triggers, and as life flows in such a way that more and more awareness and attention can fall upon those buttons and triggers, it can happen so that the misunderstanding on which those triggers and those buttons are built upon can be seen through. And one of the pointers to counter the misunderstanding is that the flow of life will ever be either pleasure or pain. It is bound to include pleasure, it is bound to include pain. There's nothing wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with the other, there's nothing wrong with life if pain is being experienced. And vice versa, there's nothing right about life if pleasure is being experienced, whether it's through me, my actions, my words, my feelings, or through the other, or through life. It's just the design of life. In this moment, pleasure is experienced. In the next moment, pain may be experienced. And this concept really landing in the system as it is confirmed by ourselves and not just believed into can really impersonalize, can really neutralize this feeling attacked by pain or feeling rewarded by pleasure, which leads to craving more of the pleasure, that I need more of the pleasure because it's a fix. It's a fix to the opposite of what is in the system, the resistance, the lack, the hurt that remains in the system, which is trying to avoid the pain in life because the system has misunderstood the flow of life as the source of suffering and the source of the end of suffering. And that is the misunderstanding. There's nothing, no amount of pleasure, no amount of pain in the flow of life that can happen, which can add to or take away from suffering. The flow of life and suffering are not on the same level of experience. Suffering has nothing to do with the flow of life. And that does sound controversial. And until it is seen through, system might even be like, what do you even mean? Of course, it's in the flow of life. Of course, I suffer because I get angry. Of course, I suffer because I feel anxiety because of my relationships or because of my financial situation or because of my health. The health condition, the financial situation, the relationship dynamic is the flow of life. The anxiety has nothing to do with any of that. the mechanism of suffering with the help of the misunderstanding and the belief that my happiness or my end of suffering is to be found in the flow of life, projects the suffering as whatever the topic in life is, which might not be ideal. And there may be many topics in life like that that may not be ideal. And the suffering mechanism, innocently, out of ignorance, attaches itself to that topic as the reason for its existence. And yet, what if the system could entertain a thought experiment to be experienced through questioning that, wait a minute, what if my relationship was perfect? Would I still feel anxiety? And there may be many instances in our life where things are ideal and we still suffer because of them. My health may be perfect, and yet I may find myself overthinking, well, what if something goes wrong? What if I fall sick? What if I fall down from here? So the flow of life, the event in life, the situation, whatever is appearing as the flow of life, is either pleasure or pain and has nothing to do with suffering. That's what it may look like, that all my suffering is because of the flow of life. So fixing the flow of life will eventually finish my suffering. But that is the misunderstanding. Life going great, which means a pleasurable life, or life going really, really bad, which means a very painful life. Any of the case as the flow of life, and suffering can be there, or suffering can totally be absent. They're not related. Once this lands completely in the system, that the flow of life is not my suffering. My suffering is a level behind the flow of life. It's my attitude to the flow of life. It's my interpretation of what the flow of life means for me or against me. And in a way, in the bottom-up approach of coming to understand what the misunderstanding is, what suffering is, and the way out of suffering, coming to see that it's my attitude, it's at the attitudinal layer that the suffering lies and not at the flow of life layer. As that becomes more and more clear, that is what we can call going inward. So now the attention, the awareness, the interest, the inspection is turning towards the attitudinal layer and not the flow of life layer anymore. So what may happen is that somebody out there or some event out there may trigger me, and instantly it becomes about, oh, I'm triggered. What's my attitude? And not a second thought is given to who said what, because it's not about that. What it's really about, if there is suffering, is what is my attitude? Oh, I see blame. I see guilt. And then just turning inward to look at that guilt or look at that blame without any object, without any person to put it on, without any event. Oh, I'm feeling guilty because life turned out that way. It's not about life. It's about there's guilt. Can I just be with the guilt without needing to project it out there on someone or something, or even on myself? And if none of that works, then maybe I project it on God, the idea of God. Because the same need to project it, project the suffering on an object, comes from an attitude towards suffering that I can't bear this. So it has to be about something. And then we create an idea of God, and we use the very concept that we talk about in wisdom talks and satsangs, that everything happens according to God's will. We use this concept very innocently, in ignorance, to blame it all on God. I'm suffering because of God, which may be accurate. And yet, that's just, if it's happening as blame towards an idea of God that we may have, is just more suffering on top of the existing suffering. So the very concept that is intended to point towards freedom from suffering becomes the very reason for more suffering. There is nothing in the flow of life that can be more than pleasure or more than pain for me. And my suffering is not in the layer of pleasure and pain. There is nothing anyone can say to me, nothing anyone can do to me, nothing anyone can intend on me, for me, good or bad, that can add to or take away from the suffering that is in my system. And maybe we need to hear this on repeat again and again and again if it's not easy to digest in this moment. And taking this concept into daily living every time when we feel attacked because of the flow of life. That is a good news, by the way. If my suffering is not related to the flow of life, that's the good news, because the outcomes have never been in my control anyway. The flow of life, what happens in life in the form of outcomes, has never been in my control. So if my suffering is not dependent on the flow of life, is not dependent on, not because of the outcomes in life, then that's a good news. That means there is potential for suffering to fall away, because who knows what outcomes are destined for me to experience in this life. And if they are painful, if they're destined to be painful, and if that was because why I would be suffering, then there was no way that suffering could have fallen away. The suffering would have increased with more and more pain in life if that's what's destined for me. But now, really recognizing and knowing that suffering is the attitude towards the pain and not because of the pain, that attitude can be looked at. The flow of life can be left alone as it is. There can be a surrender towards the flow of life, a non-involvement in the flow of life, a non-interference in how life is going. Not that we stop going to work, or we stop cooking food, or we stop doing the dishes, or cleaning the house, or doing the laundry. Not that, but now I can stop looking for what I am really looking for in the flow of life, in relationships, in money, in sex, in conversations, in connection, even. If what I'm really looking for is freedom from suffering. Because if I'm looking for connection, then yes, I do have to appreciate more outcomes which lead to connection. But if what I'm really looking for is freedom from suffering, none of that matters. And that's the good news. Because whether those outcomes are there for me to experience in life or are not there for me to experience in life, there is potential to be free from suffering, regardless. And it's like, woohoo. Thank God. Because when this concept is heard, that life really is unfolding as per God's will or as per destiny, and we are not the doer of it, the tendency to really wonder then what to do, then to really feel bad about that, oh, I have no control, that feeling restricted by that concept is really coming from the place of still believing that, oh, but my happiness was to be found in the flow of life. And now you're telling me that I'm not the doer of it. I can't do anything to change it. And I am not in control of the outcomes. That feels restricting or hopeless, because the belief, the misunderstanding that what I'm really looking for is to be found in the flow of life. And now you're telling me I can do nothing about my flow of life. So that is a bad news. But what if what I'm really looking for is not to be found in the flow of life? I'm not the doer of the flow of life. So we can leave the flow of life alone. And not alone in a way that we just bypass life and we stop caring about daily life. No, it really flowers as once the understanding fully lands, even the engagement with the flow of life comes from such a non-involved place, such a fearless, such a wise, compassionate place, that it is natural to be interacting with life now with a lightness, with an openness, because I'm not looking to get something from out there anymore. So I'm not sneakily trying to crack a business deal with you. It's like you give me validation, and that's why I'm going to shower you with gifts or shower you with words or time or whatever. Now that engagement with another person can happen from really a selfless place, because nothing that may happen out there is going to give me or take away anything from me. So this can be pure now. This can be free from selfish motives, which, by the way, may not even be conscious, but just unconsciously we are interacting with daily life, with our relationships, with our jobs, with our way of doing everything in life as what is it going to give me? It better give me what I want. And all of that movement is based on the misunderstanding that my happiness, what I'm really looking for, is to be found in the flow of life. And that's not true. And again, don't take my word for it. Just entertain the concept if possible and check it for yourself. Because I can be a millionaire and still be suffering as much as, or maybe even more than when I didn't have enough money, even to pay my bills. Because when I'm in a beautiful relationship where the other person really puts me on a pedestal and love me and appreciate for me for who I am, even then I may be suffering just as much as, or even if not more than when I was looking for a relationship in my life and feeling lonely. So we can add anything in our flow of life that felt missing before. And if that is added in life, an outcome happens where what was missing is now provided completely, we may experience that, oh no, suffering is still there. So it has to mean that my suffering was not because of not having a relationship or not having enough money or whatever our version of what we think suffering is about thereof. Seeing this, we can come back. We can come back from overanalyzing the flow of life, from overthinking about what's going on in life and who's saying what about me, or who might be thinking what about me. What am I thinking about this part of my life? All of that dimension of what we think is going to lead to clarity or going to lead to suffering falling away can be dropped, can be left alone. We don't even have to stop it. It can now just be seen as something that is not going to provide clarity. It's just mechanical. It is based on a misunderstanding that sorting life out is going to end suffering. Sorting life out, if that's what's going on in life, may lead to more pleasure if the outcome of that in sorting out of life intention or taking actions based on then that, if that happens, may lead to a more pleasurable life for sure. There's nothing wrong with it. It's maybe worth pursuing. Why not? It's better to have a little more money than I need for my bills. So then maybe with that extra money, I can travel or I can treat my parents or my friends. There's nothing wrong with that. And yet, if what I'm really looking for is to be free from suffering. Lack of money thereof, using this example, is not the reason for my suffering. So then I can really leave the millionaire situation or the lack of money thereof alone at level of flow of life, and then can really come back and be available to look at the misunderstanding. The flow of life, the events in life, daily living can ever be pleasure or pain. That is not where self-realization lies. That is not where peace of mind lies. That is not where enlightenment lies. So whatever is going on in our lives is designed to be that way. And our interpretation and our inclination to fix it or to stay with it or to leave it alone is also designed in that way based on our genes and up-to-date conditioning. Where the suffering lies is in the belief that whatever is going on in life, or whatever my efforts or somebody else's contributions or lack thereof is about that situation in life, has to do anything with my suffering. I'm suffering because you didn't help me. I'm suffering because I didn't step up. All misunderstanding. There is suffering, period. Not because of anything that happens, that has happened, or that will happen. Let's come back. I want to open the space for any questions, comments, or conversations. So feel free to raise your electronic hand on Zoom and I can unmute you. Shiv.
Hi, Gulleen. You can hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you, Shiv?
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Um, I'm breaching a topic again, which I keep bringing up with you. For a few times I haven't, but now I'm bringing it up again. So, what is the most valuable, the most precious thing that you have found? Is it just this attitude towards life, or is that attitude a means to finding something else? Is the attitude in itself the discovery that you want to share with us, or?
Um, the concept, I understand your question, but just for other listeners, I want to clarify the label that you used, like the most valuable thing. So there is no such thing as any valuable thing. So there's nothing to get in life that can feel like, oh, now I've got it. I don't think that is what the point of seeking or the end of seeking is about. The end of seeking is really falling away of seeking, not because something was found, but it just falls away. So the most valuable thing in that sense would be would there to be no seeking, really, because nothing's wrong. And even if something was wrong, who cares? It's not my job to fix it. Speaking for myself, like if there were, let's say, suffering arising within, there can be a non-involvement in the suffering also, because it's not my problem. Like Rumi said, the one who brought me here will take me home. So it's really there. I didn't put it there. If it were really up to me, I would never choose to suffer. So it is not up to me. Suffering is there, it's there. It may be there for a moment, it may be there for an hour, it may be there for a day, a week, a month, a whole lifetime. What to do? And that is not an attitude towards suffering or towards flow of life. That is the falling away of the attitude that something needs to be fixed. So it's not a positive attitude that is cultivated. It's just the absence of that misunderstanding that, trying to fix something or trying to get something or trying to finish suffering. So that movement in itself is based on that belief that once this is fixed, I'll be happy or I'll get what I'm looking for. And that is the misunderstanding. Once that underlying narrative, that underlying belief stops operating, it's just absent. There's nothing that I can do to make it fall away, because even it falling away is an outcome, and outcome is not in my control. So there's nothing that I can do that can fix that attitude or lead to falling away of the attitude of misunderstanding. It is there or it is not there. It's just how it is designed to be in this moment. So it is there, what to do? It's not there, sure, what to do? So there's no clinging or resistance, which is again not an addition on top of anything. It's just the absence of that drive to, hold on to something.
And if you are presented with, I'm not sure if you'd be comfortable with using the word attitude, but something contrary to that, how would you relate? Would you be just opposed to trying it out, or would you drop that attitude also? Because since you say it's the absence of any such an attitude only, I'll use it for lack of better word.
Yeah. So
You
the
drop it.
understanding is not, like a booklet or some concepts that once they are known, so I can say, oh, I understand now. So it's not that I remember the whole Bhagavad Gita and I understand. It is falling away of the misunderstanding. So really, we don't need a label called understanding. We don't need a label called enlightenment. We label the absence of the seeking and the absence of suffering as enlightenment. That's why the concept in wisdom teachings that there is enlightenment when there is no one left to be enlightened. This is a very respected and resonating concept in the wisdom teachings. So what it really is pointing out to is that the lack of need for enlightenment, which is basically the ultimate need, the need that is the most purified form of attachment. So all our attachments are seen to be illusion, and now there is an attachment to enlightenment left. And even that attachment, when falls away, not because of anything that I did, but that's just how life unfolds for me, if it's destined to unfold like that. What is left is enlightenment, not as an achievement for anybody, it may not even occur to someone who's enlightened that they are enlightened, because the moment that they realize they're enlightened, they're not.
Like I want to flesh it out a bit more. Like say for instance, somebody like this is the attitude that you're presenting, and if somebody were to tell you that the end of suffering. Okay, let's start with the end of suffering is to be in God's presence, and the way to be in God's presence is to chant His name all the time. And even if suffering comes, it's because I'm relying on my abilities, my strengths, my will, my interpretation of what should happen, which is my will, and is opposed to God's will, and hence I step out of His presence. This is one attitude. And then there's another, that I've been reading a novel, and I could relate really well to this character who was so caught up in his high and lofty ideals and ideas and philosophy, and his diagnosis of what's wrong with society. And through the course of the novel, he learns to ease up a bit, to take himself lightly, to laugh more, and not to, and to enjoy the things of the world also. Maybe relationship, maybe dancing, maybe sensual pleasure, maybe many things like that. To easen up a bit and not be so serious, not to take yourself so seriously. That seemed to be the import of that novel. So my point is that there's so many of these out there, and by now I feel, after having talked to you for this amount of time, I feel you also would have encountered so many of such different attitudes which do not exactly align. And in the face of that, would you hold on to your attitude, or what is your approach?
Hmm. That's a great question. That is actually a question of many, I'm sure. Um, what I do want to reword a little bit is these different, what you're calling attitudes, I would call them frameworks or approaches. So there are different paths to take us to what I've been calling the attitude of non-involvement, or the attitude of peace of mind, right? So, or what people in that framework that you said, that you chant His name all the time to be in God's presence, right? So to being in God's presence is what I would call the attitude of non-suffering. So these different layouts or explanations are different approaches that uses different labels to really the same thing. So they may look like widely different, and they are designed to be different because they are addressing seeking mechanisms of different temperaments. So a bhakti inclined seeker would probably get lost in jnana inclined seeking mechanism. So they need a framework that aligns with their system, that resonates with their system, where they can understand that, oh, like the labels, the words, the so-called levels of progress resonates in their system. They can confirm those benchmarks within their own process. And opposed to that, someone with a jnana or a self-inquiry or investigation kind of temperament would feel like the bhakti path is superstition, right? So because their temperament, their genes and up-to-date conditioning, their system is designed to question things and not to just blindly chant a name. And for the bhakti temperament, questioning is arrogance because surrender is natural. So chanting my God's name out of love and allowing it to wash away all the defilements and ill will and jealousy is the way to go. And for knowledge temperament seeking, investigating the ill will, the jealousy, the judgment, and seeing through the illusion of it, because it's only a thought, is the way to go. So even though those two frameworks don't align at all from the design and mechanics of how they work, but they're really just leading to the same attitude of non-suffering, which is not an attitude, again. which is actually the absence of the attitude of identification or attitude of arrogance or attitude of blind faith, basically
But
suffering. Yes.
what to do? I mean, these aren't just the two frameworks. There are many more that,
Yes.
and in some way, I feel I have a temperament which aligns with all of them at different times of the day, even within one day.
Yes.
And what to do about that? Even the karma, I can say karma yoga part also. I noticed like for a while I was feeling like just chanting, okay, and just to be absorbed in God's love, and then the moment I'm pulled out of it, I get angry and then very. I feel like I've lost something holy, and I feel very something, and that leads to this one of the things that I should be overcoming through the bhakti path, which is anger, frustration, anger towards God, pride, my way, many things like that. So what am I asking? Um,
Which path to choose is what I'm hearing.
yeah, and that is part of it. And is there any danger in switching between? And in a way, I don't think it's even me who's switching it. I think it's it's what I'm inspired to do in the moment.
You said it right there. There are no different paths. We label them as different paths because they're different temperaments of experiencing the process. So the karma path, the meditation path, the knowledge path, and the bhakti path. These are the umbrella of what the temperaments may feel like. And in different phases of seeking, different approaches may align with what happens with us, what we feel like doing, or what we feel inclined to merge with. So sometimes when I'm out there, let's say in a temple, I want to serve. That's karma yoga. And when I am in here sitting alone, feeling restless, and it is out of like it feels too painful, let's say, then I may use chanting to calm it down. Or other times when there is restlessness and I'm sitting by myself, I may just look as, you know what is this about? Well, then that's knowledge temperament. And then sometimes I just sit with my breath and just sit with it, not really doing anything with it. That is the meditation path. So, and this is just a very vague explanation. I'm just using these as an example. Diving deep into any one approach or just fluidly shifting into all of them or two of them or however it goes, is really the beauty of the seeking. That's why they say the journey is more beautiful than the destination. So it is our good fortune that we get to taste all of it if shifting is going on. And it is our good fortune to really be able to dive deep into one rabbit hole or one approach so much that everything dissolves. And there's no right or wrong way of doing it because no one's doing it anyway. And that is the pinnacle. That is the reason the seeking or an approach is being introduced in life, to realize that nobody's doing anything. It's all a happening. It's just presented, this very concept is just presented in different ways to different systems to make it their own in the way that it aligns with their seeking process, which is again not a choice of the seeker, but how life is designed to be in that moment for that unfolding. So there was this metaphor, like a little story that I heard. It's like if God really could be experienced the same, why would he make 7 billion human beings? And that's so true. The very first point in our talk was that all I can ever experience is my own experience. I can never know what's going on with Shiv. You may use the words, I may hear those words, and yet it'll still mean what those words mean to me. I can never understand what Shiv means. I can only think that I understand what Shiv means. and I can make you believe that I understand what you mean. But all we ever have access to is our own experience. We can never tap into another body and feel their pain or their pleasure. We can only try and relate with that from our lens of experiencing pleasure and pain. So whatever is unfolding in the seeking process, if switching back and forth in different approaches feels icky in the system, let's say, like, why am I, like, is this a commitment issue, or is this, like, am I trying to avoid going deeper by switching into approaches? That clarity is bound to happen with time if that's the case. And if the switching just feels natural and there's no problem with it, why bother? It is our destiny to have a full dance in all the rooms.
It just feels a bit, I can't make nothing. I just don't know how to approach what I'm experiencing in a way. That's, I'm left with, like I have all these speculative approaches about how those frameworks you talked about. So many frameworks, but which of them that I can really vouch for? To some extent, all of them. And which I would privilege above them all, that changes from moment to moment. In a way, it's just like standing naked. It's like somewhere you just can't, you just don't know what to do in that thing. Or
That's
even forget doing, like how to
how to
how to
explain what's going
approach.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And the how is the doer. So the one that feels restricted because the how is not clear, it's good that it feels restricted. That means it's working. That means that the doer is kind of frustrated. It's like, what do I do? How do I like, how do I bring clarity to what's going on? Because the experiencing in itself is clear. But the moment I go out there to talk about is like, how do I say this in a way without sounding, you know, flaky or mad or, confused even? Because there's no one like intellectual approach that I'm talking about like a scholar. It's like a madman speaking about, oh, the alcohol tasted like that and felt like that, and weed felt like that, and that drug felt like that, and it's like, then what am I doing? What's going on? Like,
that's exactly it. What's going on? That's the best way to phrase what is happening here. That's the yeah. I have
what
no
is
means to.
happening is God's will. And the Shiv in you might be a little frustrated. It's like, where am I in all this? It's like, how do I make sense of it? And what if we can't? That
Yeah.
is the joy of of this unfolding called seeking.
If I were to ask one more thing,
Please.
you do privilege one framework, no, in spite of it, because you keep going back to how there's no doer. While you could have interpreted that in some other framework also,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you are also aware of all the different frameworks. But you did choose to, shine this light on this, what I'm going through. You're getting me, no?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Why sticking to these concepts and not another approach or another concepts? It's probably because how it worked for me. So I'm not saying that the framework, Rogers framework, is the best framework, but this framework that I keep coming back to is what really made an impact within my seeking. And the understanding somehow trickled the system with those concepts. So even though there has been a lot of bhakti marg and the esoteric teachings that have played and still play a big part and mean are priceless for me. And yet the integration part of it, which is Rogers' framework, which is the concept of the sense of personal doership and attachment to outcome being the cause of suffering and not anything in the flow of life that is the cause of suffering, is really, it's rarely put that way according to the exposure that I've had in different teachings. So this framework is not very popular. And with esoteric teachings, at least in my experience, what happened was, as the oneness, the formlessness opened up in this experiencing, there was still a lot of suffering in the attitude level. So there was this spiritual bypassing that was going on where the process would just sneak into being the emptiness and avoid being Gurleen, because Gurleen was suffering like hell. And this framework were the concepts that really worked to bring the system back into Gurleen, and slowly Gurleen was able to open up, suffer, and the embodiment could take place. So these concepts for me are very valuable. The integration concepts, Ramesh and Rogers' framework, because practically speaking, what we're really looking for is continuous and unbroken peace of mind in daily living in each moment of life. And that continuous and unbroken peace of mind is available through, well, the recognition of the self that I really am, and that self penetrating its instrument, which is Gurleen, this body-mind organism. So an unbroken connection to the self as Gurleen is unbroken peace of mind in daily living. And so for me, coming back to these concepts that I'm not the doer is very, very crucial in my understanding, because it played a crucial part for me, and it still does. So that's why.
But as even in the Gnana path, no, like what you said, I I think you would also be curious to know what if this is also in a way like a scientist, how he approaches it. Like we have an existing theory to explain everything, you put it into application, it works. So, but what if you just leave it aside in a way, like, and then that suspension of belief in it, and you try out completely fresh, some very contrasting, contradicting framework, and you try that out fully as well, and maybe that will also seem to, like, I'm guessing you would have tried that out also, or you would be inclined to.
Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And that's why there is so much weightage put on that everything that is being said and shared here is a concept and not the truth. Because assuming whatever is heard to be the truth makes it a belief and a blind spot. And that's opposite to what these concepts intend to do. So believing in these concepts as truth is not what they're designed for. So you are right. Just dismissing all of it and starting afresh, concept free, and then discovering for yourself that, okay, what is this? What is here? What am I? What is behind this? And then reverse engineering for yourself, if that's the approach that sits well with your system, is exactly the way to do. That's really what every framework is kind of pointing us to do, or pointing to happen.
It's possible that one day you would privilege the bhakti path or the karma path more than the sense of not being a doer, not being attached to outcome. It is possible, you would say. I'm sorry, I'm asking so many personal questions, but
That is really what this time is for us to clarify any doubts. So to me, I am not the doer is bhakti, because God's will is ever pervading, all prevailing. And attachment to outcome, falling away of attachment to outcome is karma. Because what does Bhagavad Gita say? Actions, do the actions, but don't be attached to outcome. And then Jnanapath, what am I, is really the recognition of the consciousness that I am. And as that recognition takes place, as the unveiling happens, it becomes clear that these concepts, that there is no doer and the attachment to outcome is based on a misunderstanding, it's just there for you to confirm. It's just obvious. So that obvious flavor of recognition of consciousness, when trickles down to being the person and talking about it, these concepts are the best way to express what it is, or to point to what it looks like in daily living.
I'm sorry, I'm taking so much time. One more thing I want to clarify. Like when you said that, the way I understood it is that with me, it's a question mark. This framework, try it out, application, then feedback, yes or no, true or false, and then leave that aside, try another. Perhaps with you is you tried out the knowledge teachings, you reached the end point, and now it's already obvious to you without even having to try the other paths to the exclusion of the Gnana path that it is true. It's obvious to you already. Are you getting what I'm saying? I'm not
I
sure if I'm explaining.
totally, I think I do understand what you're saying. And what it means for me has nothing to do with your process. What really matters is what it means to you. And why I'm saying this is, even if I were to explain what it means for me, that our systems are so innocent and ignorant that subconsciously, or even without knowing, they will try to match our experience with someone else's explanation. So it doesn't matter what it means for me. It doesn't matter whether I've tried all of it or not. It doesn't matter whether all of them align for me or not. It doesn't even matter if I have the understanding or not while I'm sitting here and talking. It's only about my own process. That reminds me of something I heard from Osho like many, many years back. And someone was asking him, like, how do you know if you are in the presence of a true guru or the right teacher? And then he made his fun in the way that he was. And then he answered, how I heard it was that if you are a right student, even if you're in the presence of the wrong teacher, you'll get there. Your teacher may not, but you will. So it really doesn't matter how it is for me. What we
It's
do
more
want to
about
talk
not
about
so much.
is how it is for you and what
It's not
works.
so much. It's not so much about ascertaining whether you're a good teacher or not, or the right teacher or not, but it's more about following.
Yeah.
Because it's somewhere I just want to follow. I don't know why, but I guess somewhere I do know why, but it's a gamble. It's a bit of a gamble, I guess. I'm taking my chances following you. And perhaps maybe that's not the right way. In a way, it is. I don't know. You're saying I should just walk my own path, but we do come to satsang. I do follow your instructions. I do ask you questions. I do hear what you have to say, and that has an impact on how the rest of the week unfolds. So that element is there, I guess. Somewhere I am following what you're guiding us to do.
And that's enough. We don't need to have this idea of following anyone, following even a framework. This idea of loyalty is derived from duality. So we're not following a teacher or an instruction or even a framework. What we are choicelessly following is life as it is unfolding. if we were to call it that way, because there is no separate we, there is no separate following, and there is no separate life. It's not three things. It's just that one flux and movement of what's going on. So until there is an inclination to join in, to listen, and to entertain the concepts, go for it. And the moment that drops away, just be there for what's there then. And it doesn't matter whether it's this instruction or that instruction. And there may come a time when none of the instructions are needed. And maybe that's why I feel like, oh, like, how and why have I stopped following my teacher, whoever or whatever that teacher is in our life? And it just means that maybe it's not needed anymore. That doesn't mean that the gratitude is not there. It's just that there's no need to do anything. There's no need to follow the process, because it is now in my blood and bones, and it's happening on its own. So yes, the idea of which path to take is very natural. It's actually a very noble and a very useful thing to go through, and to honor if it's there, if that question is there. Just sit with the question, and the clarity may come. And if next Sunday you want to go and listen to another framework and try it out, that is what the process requires. To apply that or to discard that, that will be the outcome of that, which is not in our control anyway. So it's always worth following the flow as it flows. And even if going against the flow is going on, that is what the flow is asking for.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this long clarification that I put you through.
It's a pleasure, Shiv. Thank you for joining in. I did kind of touch this disclaimer in my conversation with Shiv, but as we end today's satsang, I want to have it out there as a clear disclaimer that whatever is shared, is spoken of, is implied, is not a prescription of something to do, is only a description of what may happen. And whether it happens or not has nothing to do with the cause of suffering. It is what the flow of life will be, either pleasure or pain. However, it sits in our system. And it's all only a concept. In a way, I can say it's all a lie, not the truth. So even if everything is forgotten from here, doesn't matter. Thank you for joining in, everybody. I love you all. See you next Sunday.